Look closely at the mass of the tusks on this animal. Long before diamond rushes or gold mines defined southern Africa, those tusks were the hard currency connecting the continent's interior all the way to the 7th century Silk Road. By the 1830s, thousands of Dutch-speaking colonists, known as the Voortrekkers, pushed deep into the unmapped African interior to escape British imperial rule. Out on the frontier, they lacked formal banking systems and had no access to stable currency. They established a northern settlement called Schwommensdal, and there, Voortrekker leaders turned to the local wildlife to finance their independent republics. Elephant ivory became their absolute gold standard. To remain completely autonomous, the Boers refused to use British-controlled ports. They hauled their harvested ivory overland to Delagoa Bay in modern-day Mozambique, trading it directly with Portuguese merchants for the heavy munitions and supplies they needed to survive. For these early republics, a tusk was an essential financial instrument. It funded their military, built their administrative infrastructure, and underwrote their sovereignty. Harvesting that amount of capital out of the harsh African veldt required a specialized heavy-duty tool of extraction. This is a Roer, a massive smooth-bore firearm that gave boar hunters a primary advantage against large game. Consider the extreme physics of this 4-bore weapon. Weighing 16 pounds, it fired a solid quarter-pound lead ball with recoil violent enough to dislocate shoulders. There was also a severe human cost. Moving the heavy guns, supplies, and harvested tusks required immense manual labor. 4 commandos utilized the in-book selling system, raiding local indigenous communities to capture laborers who were forced into indentured servitude, cynically referring to their captives as black ivory. The ecological toll was equally devastating. Decades of unregulated, militarized hunting brought what was once considered a limitless elephant population to the brink of extinction by the late 19th century. The pioneers successfully mapped the frontier and secured their independence, but in the process, they liquidated the biological asset that made their survival possible. By 1891, the leadership of the South African Republic faced a harsh reality. They recognized that the complete disappearance of game animals would eventually doom their state's self-reliance. This man is President Paul Kruger. Despite being a formidable hunter himself, Kruger engineered a radical policy pivot. He shifted the state's relationship with wildlife away from resource extraction and towards strict, absolute preservation. This vast expanse of protected land eventually became the Kruger National Park. To enforce the new laws, the very same men who made their living as frontier hunters transitioned into the continent's first armed park rangers. The policies worked. Protected from commercial hunting, the elephant population inside the park exploded, reaching over 11,500 animals by the early 2000s and overwhelming the local tree cover. South Africa had successfully pulled the elephant back from the brink of extinction. In the process, they engineered a new industrial-scale ecological dilemma of overpopulation. To protect the broader biodiversity of the park from being trampled, management implemented decades of systematic elephant culling. That culling, combined with natural animal deaths, produced a mountainous byproduct of tusks. These stacks sit inside highly classified government vaults at Skukuza. Currently, the South African government is guarding over 500 tons of stockpiled ivory. For years, regional officials have publicly valued this combined Southern African stockpile at roughly $1 billion. But that valuation is an illusion. Due to international trade bans and the global stigma surrounding the product, there are virtually no legal, responsible buyers left. The real-world value of the stockpile has crashed, turning it into a toxic asset. The state is effectively trapped. They are paying heavily armed rangers to guard a localized fortune that the global market legally refuses to recognize. The mere existence of a 500-ton stockpile creates a massive security vulnerability. It acts as a magnet for international crime syndicates, looking for a way to mix freshly poached tusks into legal reserves. South Africa defends the vault with advanced data science, deploying a digital shield, the Ivory Matrix. Through isotope profiling, an elephant's tusk absorbs its environment's chemical signature. Kriging maps these signatures spatially, pinpointing where the animal lived. Finally, carbon-14 dating determines the exact time of death, distinguishing legal historic stockpiles from freshly poached ivory. The physical vaults now serve a dual purpose. a holding cell for an unsellable commodity, and a weaponized biological database used to track and prosecute trafficking networks. This brings the tension right up to the present day, ahead of the 2026 CITES conference in Samarkand, a critical battleground for international wildlife trade laws. South Africa executed a significant maneuver. Breaking ranks with their pro-trade neighbors, the government announced a strategic retreat from the commercial ivory trade. Destroying confiscated ivory represents a definitive conclusion. The government realized the reputational damage and administrative fragility of managing the trade outweighed any financial reward. The physical tusks will remain locked in the dark, relics of a violent frontier. But the data extracted from them, the ivory matrix, secures the continent's biological future.